Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our time of worship here at Sonneberg Mennonite Church. It's good to see the regulars, and it's good to see lots of visitors, and if you're tuning in online, we welcome you that way as well. It's very enjoyable to come into the church in the morning, and there's breakfast out here and lots of visiting. I heard lots of positive energy and even some special music. It's great when you have a visitor that provides the special music as well. Thank you, Metcalf family. It feels like we're moving a little bit quickly from Thanksgiving into Christmas. And yet this is a time of waiting and expecting. We are entering a season where we are expecting Jesus at Christmas, and that sounds kind of fun. But the waiting part, how many of you like waiting? Sometimes that can be kind of long, and sometimes that can be kind of hard. But it kind of depends on your perspective of your attitude. Like, have you ever looked forward to going for a nice vacation? Sometimes the waiting and preparing for a vacation can be just as good as the actual event. As I was thinking about our service this morning, I just happened to glance at our new puppy looking out the front window of our house out there at the front yard. It is really good at watching and waiting. It is looking for any kind of movement or something new going on out there. She's pretty good at keeping her eyes open. And I'd invite you to look at some new visuals over here at the front of our sanctuary this morning. We have an old door, and that goes along with our theme for Advent here. If you notice, it has several layers of paint, and it's kind of rusty, and it's kind of rough around the edges, and it's in need of some fixing up. And another word for fixing up is restoration, and you're going to be hearing that word a lot during the Advent season. Restoration, it's a process where something old receives the repair work or the reconditioning to get it back to its original good form. You might want to make a note of how it looks this week and keep an eye on it and see if something changes by next week. And we also have a metal wreath over here. It was made out of little scrap pieces and cut and shaped and fixed together to make it. A thing of beauty made out of old parts. Now, it does have an interesting history and maybe, just maybe, an interesting future. But I'm not going to tell you the whole story about the wreath because there's some interesting parts to that. And just a little heads up for parents with young children, both these items are pretty heavy, so not a good place to play around. But I think you'll enjoy looking at those items as well as the front display. Thank you, everyone that had part of the display, and Pam for the prelude music. Join me in the call to worship, which will be a responsive reading. And let's read it together as an opening prayer to our worship service and as we open our Advent season, a time period when we are watching and waiting. Hear us, O Shepherd of Israel, you who sit on the mercy seat between the cherubim. We stand in your presence, seeking your face.
Shine forth, O Lord, in the sight of your people, that we may see you clearly. Stir up your strength in us. Come and rescue us.
The time is near. We are watching. Restore us again, O God.
Cause your face to shine, and we shall be saved. Made whole by your gracious love and kindness.
We are watching and waiting for you, O Lord. Amen. Next, we're going to have our candle lighting and special song with our choir. And it says on the side there, Worship Book 603. You can disregard that. It's part of the reference. But just enjoy it. The words will be up on the screen, and that'll be a song that we'll be continuing to hear through the Advent season. So join in as you like. So choir, come on up.
Good morning. As Phil was saying, the words will be on the screen if you would like to sing along and get this tune in your ears for the rest of Advent.
Everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Rhoda. Nope, you got to sit back over there. You don't get special treatment just because you're my kid. Go. Go on. There. Oh, no, now there's no room for you. Oh, dear. Okay. Let's just ignore him. Shh. Welcome, everybody. This is the Advent season, the very first Sunday of the Advent season. Anybody here on the front row, at least, not all you people, anybody know what Advent means? Yes? Waiting? Okay, waiting for Christmas. All right. Anything else? Yes? The day's counting down until Christmas. All right. Anyone else know what the word Advent means? Yes? What does it mean?
That's why. Also, every day of Advent, you get to have chocolate.
Oh my goodness. Advent means that every morning during Advent, you get to have chocolate in the morning. That sounds fabulous. I like Advent. What does the word Advent mean? You're getting ready for something. Something is coming. That's what the word Advent means, coming. You might have to take him back. This is a circus now. Just go ahead and take him back there. If you can catch him. There. Sorry, y'all. Those are two of my children, the only two that are here today. So, during Advent, we are looking forward to something, aren't we? Chocolate has already been mentioned. What else are you looking forward to this season? Yes? What are you looking forward to? Christmas. Yeah, we're looking forward to Christmas. What do you look forward to with Christmas? What does Christmas mean to you that you're looking forward to it? Yes? The birth of Christ. Good. Getting together with family. Good. Yes, Karis? On Christmas is Jesus' birthday, right? Everybody celebrates, or everybody should, right? Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
To spend some quality time with my family.
Spending quality time with your family. Yeah, you deserve a piece of chocolate, honestly. That's an awesome answer. Yeah. You know what? I'm really impressed that none of you said you're looking forward to presents. That's very mature of you. I'm sure you are, but you didn't say it, right? Well, I'm going to be telling you a story about some people who are also waiting. There was something that was going to be coming. They were told the Messiah was going to be coming, right? The people of Israel, God's people. Yeah. Things weren't going so great for them. Okay? The Romans had come in and kind of taken over. And they were like, we don't have as much freedom as we'd like to have. We don't feel like we get to be ourselves. But God has promised us that he's going to send a Messiah. And so we are waiting expectantly. We're anticipating. We're looking forward to that time when God's going to send the Messiah. So they've been waiting and waiting. How long do you think they were waiting? A long time. How long is a long time to you? A couple years. That's a long time. Yes? How long is a long time to you?
Sometimes
A few days? Yeah?
Yeah, 250
250 months. Somebody convert that to years, please, and tell me how long that is. Yes? How long do you think they were waiting? 80,000 years? Okay, now you're shooting really far now. Yeah, that's a bit longer. Hundreds of years, though. They were waiting hundreds of years. Do you think they got tired of waiting? Yeah. These people are like, we've been waiting a really long time. Is it ever really going to happen? People lived and died while they were still waiting, didn't they? Yeah, the Israelites were very tired of waiting. They were ready for this thing to happen. Yes, they had stuff to eat. They did. Lots of stuff. So I'm going to tell you a story from this little Bible here about two people who are waiting. And now an angel comes to tell them that the wait is almost over, okay? The angel Gabriel brings news. There once lived in Galilee an old priest called Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth. Both were good Jewish people who always tried to live by God's rules. However, they were sad because they had never been able to have children. One day, Zechariah was given a special honor. It was his turn to go into the great temple in Jerusalem to the most sacred altar and make an offering to God. As he did so, deep in prayer, an angel suddenly appeared. Zechariah was terrified. "Don't be afraid," the angel said. "I have come with great news. God is going to answer the prayers for you and your wife, begging for children. He's going to give you a son. God wants you to call him John. Your son is going to be a very holy man and will do great work for God." Zechariah was stunned. Was he really seeing and hearing an angel? And even if he was, Elizabeth was past the usual age for having children. "Are you sure?" he asked in disbelief. "How can this be?" This guy is questioning the angel. Are you sure? Are you sure you got the right person? I'm Zechariah. Do you know who I am? Do you know how old my wife is? Well, the angel says, "I am Gabriel, a messenger from God." The angel said sternly, "Because you haven't believed me, you will stay silent until it comes true." Oh dear. Do you know how long it takes to have a baby? He was silent for a long time, wasn't he? "Because you haven't believed me, you will stay silent until it comes true." And the angel disappeared just as suddenly as he had arrived. Imagine Elizabeth's surprise when her husband came home unable to speak. He had to explain what had happened by acting things out and by writing things down. Imagine Elizabeth's amazement when a short while later her husband's prediction came true. She found that she was pregnant. Elizabeth was astonished when 6 months later her younger cousin Mary arrived unannounced. All at once Elizabeth knew that Mary was also having a baby, a very special baby indeed. Just as mysteriously, Mary knew about Elizabeth's baby. Bursting with excitement and happiness, she explained everything to her cousin. Mary had been going about her chores one day, as usual, when suddenly the angel Gabriel again appeared in her little home in the town of Nazareth. It was he who had told her that Elizabeth was going to have a baby, but the angel had even more important news for Mary. Gabriel told her that God thought she was very special and that he was going to make her the mother of his own son. Mary was going to have a little baby boy, and God wanted Mary to call him Jesus. You guys are following along. Good job. He will be ruler over all the Lord's people, and his kingdom will have no end. Do you think this is what they were waiting for? Do you think they knew when the angel told them? Do you think they knew, this is what we've all been waiting for? It's finally going to happen. I think they did. I think they got kind of excited. Angels don't visit people very often, do they? Even back in Bible times. Mary hurried off to visit Elizabeth straight away so she could share her joy with her cousin. She stayed as long as she could to help her with her baby. But before Elizabeth's baby was born, Mary had to return home to prepare for the birth of her own child. We'll talk about the rest of that story the next time we have story time in a couple weeks, okay? Thank you, guys. Go look forward to doing something. Yep, that's true.
Please stand if you are able and join us in worship this morning.
World waits for
of incarnate love divine, star and angel give the sign. Bow to babe on bended knee, the Savior of humanity. Unto us a child is born, he shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world, given for us. Son of God and Son of Man, there before the world began. Born to suffer, born to save, born to raise us from the grave. Christ the everlasting Lord, he shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world, given for come and see what God has done. Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world, given for us.
Thank you, worship team. It's nice to hear some new music. We've had some new songs. Our scripture comes from Romans today, Romans 13, 11 through 14. So if you're following along, Romans 13, 11 through 14. And do this, understanding the present time, the hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. Glenn, blessings to you as you bring the word.
Grace and truth to each of you from God our Father and Jesus Christ our Lord. We have reached the season of Advent. We had a time of Thanksgiving, and if you were able to be here Wednesday evening, we listed a number of things. We were naming what we want to what we want to thank God for. And there were 3 things, and you can see them in the foyer. If you haven't already, the papers that are up on the wall, we wanted to thank God for what we wanted to name what we wanted to thank God for this year, or what we were grateful for about our church, and the people that we're thankful for. So if you haven't had a chance yet to look at those things on the paper in the foyer and to add what you're thankful for, we're leaving those papers up the next number of weeks, and there are markers out there, and you can add to each of those questions or what you're thankful for. Rhoda, you did a great job of asking what Advent is, and I appreciated the chocolate especially. I have fond memories of Advent calendars, and we've used those with our kids. And I also wanted to ask the question, what is Advent? And there is this great description in the Advent at Home resource that I had mentioned, and it is the season. So listen to this explanation. I've often wondered, I don't think I paid attention to it when I was younger, of what Advent was. So I like that we're talking about Advent. But listen to this explanation. It is a season of preparation in which we recreate the longing people felt before the birth of Jesus. Christians prepare for the celebration of Jesus' birth by remembering the longing for a Messiah. And I liked also how Rhoda asked, how long were they waiting? How long had we been waiting for the Messiah? So I preached last Sunday from the book of Isaiah, and Isaiah was right around the time of the fall of the southern kingdom. And we had the exile into Babylon, and they returned right around 538 before Christ. So, from Daniel being in Babylon, I'm going to list the prophets: Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Okay? All those prophets there from the return in 538 until Malachi was written around 430. And that's the last we hear from a prophet in the Old Testament while they're anticipating the coming of the Messiah. So I appreciated all the guesses. I think I looked up how many months that was. 125 months, I think, was 20 years. But for 500 to 400 years, the children of Israel were awaiting the Messiah, eagerly anticipating this coming and looking for the Messiah. And I stepped in on the youth Sunday school class a few weeks ago when Chip was leading the youth through his family of God, talking about different members of the family of God. And it happened to be the Sunday where they're talking about Simeon and Anna when they were in the temple, when Mary and Joseph brought Jesus to be, consecrated, I think. It was like 40 days after his birth. This was the Matthew passage. So Simeon, this really old man who God had given him the word that he wasn't going to die before he would see the Messiah. And here comes Jesus as a baby, and he sees Jesus. He had waited his whole life, and then he could die. And then also the prophetess Anna, who is this woman who stayed in the temple day and night fasting and praying. So we have not only the whole children of Israel that have been waiting for hundreds of years, we have these two characters, these two family members of God that were anticipating this long-awaited Messiah, and they got to see him. Why celebrate Advent? Living in the Advent season slows us down and helps us remember that December is not just about frantic preparations for Christmas. I also like that description. And this also is in that Restoration is Near Advent at Home resource. And we said we were going to send out that link. If you still want that, shoot me a text or an email. It just takes a couple seconds and I can share that link, or there's copies in the office if you want to go through this Advent at Home resource. But I want to read that again. We celebrate Advent because living in the Advent season slows us down and helps us remember that December is not just about the frantic preparations for Christmas. I want everyone to just take a collective deep breath and exhale. Even this morning, there's so many different elements in the service, and there's so many things going on, and there's so many wonderful things going on. Last Sunday, I mentioned I finally understood the difference between alternative Christmas and affordable Christmas, and I even left out the people-to-people, gifts that we were collecting. I think it still goes till December 1st. We're still collecting those this week. There are so many things we can be doing. There's so many great things to be doing, but I want to encourage us to just also take a step back. This season when things can be harried, when we are making preparations. Many of us just came from a week of meal preparations and family coming in. And what is it that you need to be mindful of in this season? Now, this is our first Sunday of Advent, and there's 7 weeks here till we get to Epiphany. So we're not in a rush to get through this month. It seems like Thanksgiving just happened, it came, come, and went. But it's not even December yet. We're still in November, and Advent is upon us. It is going to be exciting to see what happens with this door. And this door and the progression through the candles in our Advent wreath, which there's something to be learned about the Advent wreath as well. And I'm just going to point out there's something about the berries in this restoration and transformation that has something to do with the Isaiah passage that we talked about the last 2 weeks of swords into plowshares. This idea of restoration. How are we as a congregation or as individuals in the midst of restoration? What is going on within us? What is your role or your part to play in the process of restoration? This idea in Isaiah 2 that we've talked about the last 2 weeks about this coming day of the Lord, of the swords being beat into plowshares, this weapons of war being beat or destroyed and shaped or restored into something different. This idea of how it has already begun, this coming day of the Lord, but it's also not quite fully realized. It'll be finally consummated at the second coming of Jesus. This passage in Romans, the day is near, we find it in the middle of about 4 or 5 chapters here where Paul is talking about this practice of righteousness. It's practicing or practice righteousness. And in 13 here, if you go back to chapter 12, the familiar passage of a living sacrifice, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. This transforming, this call to holy living, Paul is speaking to this church in Rome that is about 20 years old. These people have been called to this faith, but it's not something new, and he's taking them back to the beginning of when they first believed. And there are 3 imperatives, 3 things that we are to do, that who Paul was speaking to, they were supposed to do, and we are to do today. The day is near. So these 3 things, you see in verse 12, the one is to put aside deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. It's abandoning vices and replacing them with virtues. This putting on, this is clothing, this is baptism language. It's clothing ourselves, putting off the things of old and putting on, and it's the armor of warfare. This idea that baptism, we often think of it and we describe it this way as an outward sign of an inward reality, but it isn't just that. It's an enlisting. This call to being enlisted into God's army of light to fight the darkness of evil. So I want to call you all back to your baptism, that it's not just this symbol that showed this inner reality, this outward symbol, this testimony to the community, but it's actually, can we think of it as an enlisting into God's army? This idea of being awake and alert. If we are called and being enlisted into God's army of light to fight the darkness, we have to be aware. We have to be ready. What are we fighting against? What are we up to? What is going on in the world around us that we need to be aware of? What do we need to throw off from our old self to be able to put on what is new? The second imperative is to behave decently as in the day. Proper Christian conduct puts off sexual immorality, drunkenness, dissension, and jealousy or rivalries. And what we are called to is purity, sobriety, mental alertness, and solidarity, of being with one another and for one another, not dissension, not divisions, not dividedness, but this coming together and being with and for one another. The third imperative is that we clothe ourselves with Jesus. And with this new clothing, we avoid the desires of the flesh. To put on Christ is to submit to his lordship and to live within his community. What are we asleep to? What are we just being desensitized or lulled to sleep? You know, in the time of the Romans, there were chariot races. There were gladiator games. And I've heard it described, it was to lull the masses. It was entertainment that kept people from thinking about revolt or whether they were enslaved. It was distractions. So what today are we distracted by? What are the masses that we are kept unaware or maybe not vigilant of the battle going on around us? And it's easy to name things like sports or Hollywood or things that distract us and may desensitize us to what's really going on. You know, I was convicted in some of my study of like, oh, what movies are we watching today? What are we watching with our kids? And I just had this conversation with my wife this last week of some of the things that we watch that maybe desensitize our kids, whether it's violence or many other things that can be happening in the world around us, that we kind of say, we either turn a blind eye to or we don't stand up against and say, that's not right. We shouldn't be participating in that. What do we need to wake up to? How do we need to realize that this day of the Lord has already come? It's not fully realized, but it has already begun. This salvation, this day of the Lord, is already here. The joy of the salvation of the Lord is already accessible to us. At the same time, when was the last time you thought about Christ's second coming? How soon might he come back? The day is at hand. And that's what this passage tells us. It is near. To realize that not only has it already begun, Christ's return is imminent. Will you be ready? Are we watching? Are we waiting? This restoration is not only near, but it has already begun. In 1 Thessalonians 5, we have this passage, the day of the Lord. And there are a number of these passages where Paul talks about this. But in verse 6, so let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as a breastplate, and the hope of salvation as a helmet. Again, we have this clothing of warfare. What is this battle that we need to prepare for? How do we need to protect ourselves from this onslaught? What are we up against? The day of the Lord is still on its way, but believers now already are children of the light and sons and daughters of the day. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the singing group. They were Full Table, and then a number of them changed to Sons of the Day. These were friends of mine in college, and I hadn't thought about the significance of their name until reading this passage. Sons of the Day. It talks about all these things that happen often at night. These things, these evil deeds, the darkness, the drunkenness, the orgies, the licentiousness, the dissension, these things that happen in cover of darkness that people would be ashamed of doing in the full light of day. We are children of the day. We are children of the light. We display the deeds of light, not only because the day of the Lord is coming, but also we already participate by faith in that day. I'm going to close by reading this passage in Matthew. Again, it is the day and the hour that is unknown. Matthew 24, 36 to 44. But about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill, one will be taken and the other left. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Therefore, watch. The day is almost here.